So here we are. This one isn't blooming yet. This plant is very, very important. It's a lemonade berry, it's called. So here we're gonna have some berries pretty soon, and they're really interesting looking. They look like a corn kernel, but they're bright orange. They're like a red orange, and they're sticky. And I want you to kind of get the idea that when we walked everywhere, because we didn't have horses, not till the Spanish came. So if I want to go visit my relatives in Ventura, I'm going to try to make sure I have some of those lemonade berries, because when you get thirsty and there's no water, like right now in the river, there's no water. So you had two things: chia seed or native chia and lemonade berry. When you put a lemonade berry in your mouth, it's like eating a sweet tart. Your mouth, like a sour, they don't call it lemonade berry for nothing. It makes your mouth just fill up with saliva, which then kind of quenches your thirst. So you would keep those. You didn't chew on them or swallow them, you just spit them out. This plant here, Toyon, you can tell by its little serrated leaves. We needed, again, more digging poles and structure poles. We used the willow for our house because those bend. But we couldn't make houses, but we could make other structures out of the Toyon, and those had berries. Now those are usually in the winter time, and there's still probably some on the bigger trees. They grow really tall, kind of like the elderberry. Those are kind of survival food. You can't eat the berries when they're soft. You have to dry them or roast them, and then you can grind them up into flour and sprinkle them on things. Or if you dry them and roast them, you can rehydrate them, because they have a bitter tannin or some type of thing that makes them bitter when you eat them just picking them off the bush. So you don't want to do that. But they're a beautiful, beautiful little berry. The other thing that the branches did of the Toyon was that they grew nice and straight. And we're going to talk a little bit about bulbs and roots that people dug up and ate and used for certain things. But they needed to get in the ground. Again, no metal. So we didn't have shovels, but we did have digging sticks and rocks. So this rock, it's called a donut stone. They purposely put a hole in there, and they'd have a Toyon branch much taller than this. This is just a sample. It would be big enough so that you would hold it like this. You could put the stick on the rock, and then you'd use it as leverage. So my stick would be a lot taller, and you would dig holes and move the ground around, and you'd be working around the rocks, because these bulbs and roots love growing around all the rocks along the creek beds and all that. So you needed this as leverage to weight your digging stick down. So that was a very important tool to have along with your Toyon. So I'm going to continue on with our Toyon and our digging sticks, because a couple things that I have here are the result of digging up some of the bulbs. We have a beautiful bulb that grows way deep in those rocks, way deep in the underground. And you notice them by their little bristles standing up off the ground that just kind of poke out like that. And then these long, they look like corn leaves. Some woman said, "We got corn growing here." I said, "No, that's a soaproot, or posh, it's called." And so as you're digging with those digging sticks, you want that bulb, because the bulb came in super handy for us. It was roasted and eaten as a food, kind of like a turnip in a roasting pits. You can take it raw and take off all these little fibers, because all the bulbs are covered with these little fibers like this. So you clean those off, and you scrunch up the bulb, and you use it to wash your clothing. My grandfather Cecilio used to work on Santa Cruz Island shearing the sheep. Now the sheep were oily and greasy, and his clothing would get all full of that grease and oil from the hides, from the fur. And he'd get home and he would use the soaproot on his clothes, and it actually cleaned all that stuff off. Well, what that also did is, if you took that liquid out of the bulb and squished it out, kind of like the oil from the acorns, you can pour it right where the fish like to hide in the rocks. And what it does is that stuns the gills of the fish just long enough that they float to the top of the water. We'd grab them and stick them in our nets. Now, even the bristles came in handy. We needed brushes. So here I have a brush. This is the bulb that has been stripped and made into a pulp. And then the bristles, as it formed around the bulb, were fashioned into a brush. So this could be used for cleaning your acorn trays. We made smaller ones for paint brushes for the caves too. So yeah, every part of a plant was used. We needed string, and we used nettles for cordage. We use dog bane, which gives you a nice, beautiful red, brown cordage, and milkweed. Those are our three principal ones, but we also use yucca. Now at the schools, you're probably not going to have yucca plants because those are those long cactus bayonet leaves with a big point on the end. And they're a little dangerous for you guys to be playing around. But we have learned that if you take those leaves and pound out all the chlorophyll and get down with some water and a rock and a scraper to clean off all the outer part of those leaves, you get these beautiful fibers like this under the leaves. And then you learn how to twine them. Like we use like a strand of about 10, divide it up in half, and then it's kind of like a two braided process where you spin them and cross them, spin them and cross them, using water to keep them kind of, soft. And eventually you can get a cordage long enough that, thick enough, however you need it for. We usually do them for stringy necklaces, things like that. So this comes in really handy if you ever need, you're out in the wilderness and you want to use some string or learn how to make string.